The EPA has announced it won't finalize its targets for the Renewable Fuel Standard until 2015. The agency's earlier proposal for 2014 would have trimmed the overall renewable fuel number by about 3 billion gallons. It now says it'll set standards for 2014, 2015, and 2016 next year. Earlier this week, Todd Neeley from DTN joined us to discuss why the EPA opted to delay its decision.
Well, I think there were a number of things. There's a lot of politics that play into it. It's really hard to say at this point, other than maybe there was a little confusion once that they put the rule out, and then really got to looking at it, they started thinking that maybe maybe there's some things that we need to look at a little closer, because there was quite an outcry from farm groups and ethanol groups about the methodology that they use, because one of the drivers behind the RFS is that it's supposed to drive innovation and spark all these different new ideas and different technologies. And basically, what's happened when they opened up this RFS this last time around, it was more at the behest of the oil companies that said we don't have the infrastructure, and so that's where it stands now.
So, for someone who covers the industry, were you surprised that it was both pushed back and completely scrapped?
In a way, no. There had been some rumblings in the days leading up that EPA was pretty indecisive. I mean, we were already close to a year after, maybe it was more than a year after they announced the original proposal. And so when they finally said that, well, we're just not going to get it done this year, it provided a lot of hope for people who were against it to begin with, that maybe EPA took a look at this and said, wow, we just can't go with it right now.
So what was the reaction then from the pro-renewable group?
I think most people looked at this and said, hey, we got what we wanted. EPA is going to slow this thing down. They're going to really consider what all the people were saying about how they were rearranging the methodology and looking at this thing in a way that the law doesn't even support.
The American Petroleum Institute is obviously not pleased with this. They say they might file a lawsuit against the EPA. It also wants to completely scrap the RFS. What are the chances that happens?
I think that's pretty unlikely. The RFS has complete support in the House. I mean, there are certain segments of representatives who want to change it, and I think that we're more likely to see some sort of a reform movement. It may be something as simple as adjusting the volumes or changing the way that they look at the volumes every year. Because I think if you talk to the ethanol people, they're going to say, we can't keep going through this every year, wondering what's to come.
Is there a hint as to what the new numbers might look like?
What we've been hearing, especially yesterday, there was a briefing on Capitol Hill. They said probably for 2014, they were going to leave whatever the production was this past year as the number. Now, obviously, that doesn't do much for the market. I mean, that does provide a little stability for the biofuels industry to know that the RFS is still in place and that they're still implementing it. But it's not the driver. It's more or less kind of a fallback plan, this far into the game.
Tell me more about how it affects the markets for biofuels, but also corn and soybeans.
Yeah, I think going forward there's an opportunity here. If for some reason EPA decides that they're not going to change the numbers and we go into 2015, that's going to up the overall volume amount by roughly up to 15 billion gallons or whatever the number is. And so it's creating more of an opportunity for fuels other than corn and ethanol to fill the gap in the total RFS. So this could benefit biodiesel, cellulosic ethanol, and so there's a lot of opportunities for potentially the soybean market to get a boost from this, especially.
So there's a changing landscape now in Washington with a new Congress after the first of the year. There's a presidential election in 2 years. Does this at all shift a change in policy about renewable fuels?
I think in some ways it might. From the get-go, the Obama administration has been highly supportive. I mean, Barack Obama ran on a platform of supporting biofuels, and so he built quite a contingency from the home state of Illinois and across the Corn Belt. But what we've seen lately with the RFS being opened every year, it seems, it really has raised some doubt about what's going to happen going forward. Now, in the House and in the Senate, we still see a lot of top-notch representatives who support this industry, And the case has been made a lot by the biofuels industry that basically, ethanol and advanced biofuels is all EPA has as an alternative to fossil fuels.
You can read more of Todd's work about the Renewable Fuel Standard on DTN, or you can follow him on Twitter for updated coverage on ag policy throughout the week.